Ta-da. Sweet. Okay, so hello everyone. We're so happy to see you all today. I am Deb Ryan. I am an IEC I live in Eastern North Carolina. I'm in Little Washington, which is a great little town on the Pamlico River. We're about 25 minutes east of ECU University. And I am so excited for this group to be in existence. And Kim is the best partner I could have. Kim, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Kim Stoghill. I am currently living in upstate New York, but this is a temporary stopover before I get back to the South, my true home, where I'll be in Birmingham, Alabama, starting next summer. But my business is still based in Charlotte, North Carolina. So that is why I am, among many reasons, why I am still affiliated with SACAC. So great to be here. Thanks for everybody for coming and joining us today.
I just want to go through the agenda really quickly and then also just kind of some rules and regulations. So we're going to start with about a 10-15 minute presentation from Eric Mena, who is the co-founder of Loper, which is an app that I love. And we're really excited for you to hear about. And then we're going to talk, we decided to call it Rants and Raves for a little bit, things that have been really good so far this season, things that have been maybe not so good. And Kim and I will be regulating the chat, sort of going through that. If you'd like to speak at some point, just please raise your hand in the on your screen so that we can kind of keep track of who's talking and invite people to the conversation. Then we're going to head into some sort of things you learned this season, and then things maybe you feel like you need to learn. And then at the end, if we have time, we'd like to talk about some hidden gems, some schools maybe that you discovered this year that you would like to share with other people. And Eric, if it sounds good to you, what we'd like to do, I think, is have people just kind of put questions in the chat, and then Kim and I could collate those and send them over and then share out your answers. Does that sound like a good call?
Yeah, absolutely. And my presentation usually only takes 6 or 7 minutes, so we can also save some time at the tail end for questions as well.
That's great. Fantastic. Well, if you want to get started, that would be great. Thank you so much for joining us today, Eric.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to see everyone here. We do a lot of these presentations for regional IEC groups embedded within regional ACAC organizations. We're based out of Chicago for reference. I'm sitting here in a pretty dark and dreary WeWork in River North Chicago, if any of you are familiar with the neighborhood. And I have to call out Jim Hauser. I am also a graduate of Georgetown University, as I see Healy Hall in your background. A little bit about me. My name is Eric. I'm one of the two co-founders, as Deb mentioned, of Loper. We are a free app that helps students discover colleges, kind of put them in the driver's seat of their college research. I'll show you what the app looks like here in just a moment, but I went to Georgetown, graduated in 2018, worked as a management consultant for a company called Bain & Company for a few years, focusing on educational research and educational support. I did not have a lot of passion for consulting. I do have a lot of passion for education. So about a year ago, I quit my job and joined another alumni of Georgetown to start Loper. And I'm going to go ahead and share screen here just as an introduction to talk about what Loper is, and then I have a short video to show. So as I mentioned, Loper is a free and personalized college search app. Students swipe right and left on personalized questions about what they're looking for in their college experience, and they discover best fit schools that fit the preferences and constraints of what they're looking for. If you think about us versus some of the other college search platforms out there, I'll name a few just for familiarity. There's ranking sites all the way on one side of the spectrum, which are technically considered search tools. We don't like ranking sites here at Loper. There's platforms like Big Future from the College Board, where students set and forget filters and receive a lot of schools for them to look at. And then there's other search engines that really provide generic and generalized information on websites for students. And as we see here on kind of this side by side of us versus other tools.
Eric, I think we have lost you for a second. Kim, are you also having trouble hearing him?
Yeah, I can't hear him.
Oh no, Eric, we've lost you. I'm just going to actually step in for 2 seconds until we figure out sort of where he is. I connected with Loper really early on when they had developed their app, and many of my students use it. And they've called it Tinder for college, which I think is a good thing. They seem to really enjoy that, the swiping part. And many of my students have said that it's kind of addictive and that they really enjoy answering all the questions. And so it's been incredibly fun to have students use the app. I think it asks really good questions, kinds of things that students typically don't think about, particularly I think in the South. A lot of students focus, you all have seen this, their search on where has really good football. That seems to be a big thing that comes up for Southern schools. And so it helps students move beyond what happens on 5 Saturdays of their school years. A really good question. I will talk about that in a second. And so it really asks very good questions about the experience that they want to have, their academic interests, their club interests. Oh, no, that's fine. I was just bragging about the app.
I honestly wish I could say anything other than the classic internet excuse. So apologies to everyone.
No worries. I'll just answer this question really quickly. So my students use it after our first meeting. So it's one of the things that I introduce my students to immediately after we start meeting. And then many times they will go back to it as well, just to answer the question that was in the chat. So I'm sorry, I was just bragging about the app and how much my students get addicted to it.
No, I love it. I love it. And that's a great point. We consider ourselves top of funnel. So when you're getting students really started on their college research, we see IECs do that potentially beginning of junior year, potentially in the junior spring. Some of you are even starting it earlier with sophomores. And as Deb mentioned, one of the things we hear a lot from students that use our app is that it's more fun and engaging than any other way of researching colleges. And that's why we find that students go back to it time and time again. I'm going to switch over now to a video, and hopefully my computer cooperates with me. Can everyone see the video okay on the screen? Great, thanks, Deb. So just to cut right to it, I want to show you all what the student experience looks like on Loper. To get some questions out of the way up front, we have thousands of schools on our platform, hundreds of different questions for students to answer about what they're looking for. And one thing I'll point out that you'll see in a little bit is we try and take away the idea of name brand recognition from college research and discovery by actually removing the name of a school when a student sees it for the first time, so they can instead focus on whether or not that institution meets what the student is looking for. But we'll see that all in a moment. Instead, what I'm going to do is just start the video and show you what it looks like to be a user on Loper's app. And it all starts with setting up a basic profile, helping students input factors like their GPA, any test scores if they've taken them. All of these fields are optional and they can choose to input however much they'd like. We ask them when they're graduating from school, and then we move on to their basic preferences, like where in the US they're looking to study. They can isolate specific states if they're looking for it, what type of setting they prefer. And one thing that we hear a lot from counselors in this space is that we define all these concepts for students as they go. We don't know that the typical junior in high school really understands what an urban setting is. So we instead give them the opportunity to learn while they're searching for schools. Now, I as a student can preference urban and college towns. I can preference smaller schools. I can also state my perceived financial need so that we can direct them towards schools that meet a high percentage of demonstrated interest, state my academic disciplines that I'm interested in. And then also where we really differentiate from other search providers is asking students what matters most to them in their college search, which is what you'll see on the next screen. And this is how we personalize the entire experience for Loper. Kids go to college for such different reasons. My co-founder and I both went to Georgetown for completely separate motivations, and we were advertised to by Georgetown and discovered the school in the exact same way. We think that that's a problem here at Loper. So what we're trying to do is help kids hone in on what matters most to them so that we can dig deeper. In those 35, 40 seconds, students set up a profile, and then they transition to what's called swiping on prompts. And this is where you may have heard of us as the analogy of a dating app for finding your college. It's not something that we say ourselves, but a lot of counselors get a kick out of it. We do use a swiping interaction where students swipe right on questions that matter to them, swipe left on questions that don't, swipe up on questions that are essential, and swipe down on questions that they're against. The great thing about Loper is that every single question that we ask a student is also an opportunity for them to dig deeper into the concept at hand. And let's take an example here, like my first prompt that I see in my stack, the campus quarter system. I had said that I was interested in campus and facilities in my school. and I'm being immediately shown a question regarding that aspect of my college experience. But I, as a junior, probably don't have any idea what a quarter system is. So I, as a student, can press that Learn More button at the top, and I'm taken to an entire lesson about what quarter systems are, how they factor into the college experience, the types of students that benefit from being in quarter systems. And if I feel ready, I can just swipe right. We do the same thing with academic programs where we help students realize, again, I had said I was interested in business, so I'm being shown an international business program here, what the major includes, the types of students that are interested in the international business major. And then for academic majors specifically, all of our prompts contain outcomes associated with receiving a four-year bachelor's degree within that given discipline. We use an aggregated provider called PayScale located in Florida. They collect millions of compensation data forms every single year so that they can map that back to school outcomes, and we embed it on our platform. Now, this is what the experience looks like to find colleges on Loper. You swipe on the prompts that matter to you, and you start building out a really holistic aspect of your search. You can learn about your college experience as you go by digging deeper into each of the things we're asking you about, and we'll focus on asking you about the concepts that you had preferenced in your profile. Rather than have students answer all 270 questions that they could and then see schools, we instead show them matches as they go. And the two things that I'll point out on a matches screen is, as I had mentioned prior, first and foremost, we do not show the student the name of the school when it's shown to them as a match. Instead, we pull off the name and show them where the school is, its size, its type of location. And then if you'll see on your screen where it says esports, yearbook, and AP credit, those are things that I had swiped on as a user on Loper's app. So we're helping students realize here are the reasons why a college is a good fit for you in the moment where it's shown to you as a match. Now, whenever I'm ready as a student, I can just save a school to my list. And what I'm doing here is building that initial set of institutions that I might consider applying to down the line. When I have a good list and I'm ready to learn more about my schools, I can head over to my schools tab, as you'll see me do here in a moment, and I can dig deeper into one of the schools on my list. There I'll see all of that information, including the reasons why I matched with the school, the academic programs that the school features that are good for me, the admissions information of the school so I can think about preparing my application, the earnings associated with receiving a four-year degree from that school, both right out of college and 6 years down the line. And at the bottom for all of your students, one of the things that we hear they love the most is we have direct access to all of the social links for a given college so they can go and check out a school's Instagram account on their own if they want to. We also have links to the direct admissions website, as well as the net price calculator for a given school. This is the experience on Loper. I can show it to you in just a few minutes because it really is that intuitive. You build a profile, you swipe on questions about what you're looking for, and then you build a best fit list of schools. But what I want to show you all briefly as a counselor is that we had actually set up a dashboard for you to be able to see all of this information so that you can better engage with your students when you meet with them. And what that would look like on the student side is simply going up to my profile, tapping that little person icon in the top right, and tapping that button, Join Counselor Portal. And the Counselor Portal is a web dashboard that I'll switch over to here in a second, but all a student would need to do is enter the email address associated with the portal if you were to sign up. And when they do, they're synced up to your dashboard, meaning they could swipe on more questions, they could save down more schools, they could continue searching on Loper, and all of that information will be reflected on your portal. Very briefly, I just want to switch over to what that would look like to be a counselor engaging with the portal. So I'm logged on here to my counselor portal. Unlike you, I have a tiny little caseload of only one student, so it's pretty easy for me to keep track. And I can see some really helpful things from me as a counselor. I can note the last time the student was actually using the app, which we find really valuable for counselors that are struggling to get students to go through their research. I can see all the number of questions that a student has answered and how many schools that they've matched with. But when I tap that View Profile button, that's where I'll get a full holistic view into my student's college search. I can see their school preferences across size, setting, need, and regions. If I collapse that section, I can see all the different academic interests that the student has expressed on the platform across those disciplines that they had preferenced early on in their profile. Underneath that, I can see all of those other things that the student had swiped on to drive their college search, whether it was being a part of an international student population or considering something like a first-year study abroad program. things that are really helpful for you all as counselors to engage with your students about when it comes to fit. And then underneath all of that, I can see the schools that the student had saved down to his or her list, so that you as counselors can actually put students in the driver's seat of gathering those initial set of schools that they might be interested in. And then they can walk into your virtual office or your actual office and say, hey, here are the schools I saved on Loper. Here's what I'm excited about with them. And I really want to talk to you about thinking about whether or not they're the right fit for me. The last thing that I'll mention before I hop over to questions, and apologies for going a little long, is this is a completely free app, and the counselor portal is a completely free resource for you all as counselors. We want students, and our mission really is to empower students to make the right decisions for their education. And we think it's just too darn hard and not enjoyable to go out and actually do your research about college. So this is a free resource for everyone. What I'm going to do briefly is pause my screen sharing while folks gather questions, and I'll put a couple of links in the chat to our website, as well as to the Google form to sign up for a counselor portal, if any of you are interested in doing so. Deb, I don't know if there are any questions that you want me to answer live here.
Yeah, there are. That'd be great. I'll ask just a couple. So when students are putting in their GPA, are you asking them to put in their weighted GPA, unweighted GPA, or their recalculated GPA? To be honest, I don't think most students know how to recalculate their GPA, so I don't think they would even know what that is. But are you asking them to put weighted or unweighted in?
Yep. So it's meant to be unweighted, and it's on total estimated basis. I don't want people to think that their Loper is going to show them different schools if a student enters a 3.71 and a 3.68. Instead, what we do is really just think about it directionally. So we don't want students that have 2 5s to find Harvard as a match, and we don't want students that have 4 O's to find a different school that's not Harvard and potentially is a little bit lower on the list as a match. We take the approach of let's keep it relatively open when it comes to competitiveness of entry, so that counselors can really focus on those factors when they turn to using Loper with their students.
A couple of questions about the name, why it's called Loper.
Oh, that's like one of my favorite questions to answer ever. So we found when we were doing research about a year ago, and we were still trying to figure out the name, that there are 2 problems that students seem to have when it comes to their college research. The first is they get stuck and they're just waiting around for someone to tell them what to do. And that's when they really turn into a passenger. And the second is that they actually just fly through the entire college application process and think instead about, let me just get to the finish line because I don't want to handle this work. And to lope is actually to move at a sustainable pace that feels good to you. And that's how we think the college admissions process should be. You should be loping through your college admissions process rather than trying to rush through it or really malaising through it at a slower pace. Deborah, I can answer your question directly because I think that that's one that a lot of IECs tend to ask. The first question we ask on Loper's account creation is whether or not a student would opt in to providing their information to educational institutions. And so we do actually communicate with higher ed schools to work with student data, but we actually find that most students don't opt in on our platform. 2 students that have one that has opt-in preferences and one that does not have the exact same experience on Loper. So rest assured for you, if you tell your students to not opt in when they create their account, their information won't be shared with anyone. We do work with higher ed institutions, and that's how we're able to keep our app and product free for both counselors and students.
One other question that you could ask, and then what we'll do at the end of this is just kind of curate the questions and send them over, and then send the responses back to folks. One of the questions is from the counselor side within the portal. Can you organize it? Can you sort of restructure sort of how it's organized by year, by school, by like, are there ways within the counselor portal for counselors to sort of, instead of just seeing a list of names, reorganize sort of what that looks like? Or is that something that's in the works, perhaps?
So that's something that's in the works. The counselor portal only released a couple of months ago. And frankly, we're still just trying to get as many people to use it so we can get feedback like that as possible. One of the things that is really great, and I'll go ahead and resume sharing my screen here. Deb, do you see the counselor portal in Zoom?
Yes.
You can search for specific students as well. So I don't have anyone named Deb in my caseload, obviously, so no one shows up. But for those of you that do work with larger caseloads, it's really easy to get down to the individual student via search. And because you spend more time in the profile section than you do in the mass section of all your students at once, it's actually better to really focus on getting to that view profile link as quickly as possible. And our way to address that early on was with the search engine. And you can absolutely try the app yourself. I'm going to put a couple of links in here for folks to explore Loper as a product as well. And Deb, I'll steer based on what you think is best here. I can put these links in and kind of stay on mute and answer questions over chat, or I can continue with the Q&A.
Yeah, if you don't mind staying on and doing the questions through the chat, that would be great. And we'll sort of switch over to our next piece about rants and raves, if that sounds, and it'd probably be interesting for you to hear some of that as well. So yeah, that'd be great. Thank you so much again for your time. I can't speak highly enough of this app. It's such a great, particularly for my 9th and 10th graders, it's such a great, and if you only start with juniors, it's a great starting point for students. It's fun. Students really engage with it. It speaks to their world because it's this easy swiping up and down and around. I love that it's not rank based. It's not about rankings. It's not about names. I love that so much. And so I'm just deeply appreciative that you all have this app. I think it's been a great resource for all of us. So
thanks so much for having us, Deb.
Yeah, of course, always. Oh, and the app or desktop, you can use so students can most of my students use it on the phone. It's a great app. Counselor stuff is on the portal. Can you get to the counselor portal from the app as well, or is it mostly desktop?
The counselor portal is designed to be on desktop, and the student app is designed to be on tablet or phone. Again, Gen Z kids want to spend all their time on those touch devices rather than computers these days. And it seems like folks my age and older want to spend time on computer. So we've separated it that way.
Awesome. And then Eric, do you mind unsharing your screen? Would be great.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. All right, so next up, very exciting things. What we would love to do is talk about, spend a little bit of time sharing. Oh, and he's joined us. This is Mr. Big, who loves to join meetings. We would love to hear maybe some rants and raves. So things that are making you very happy this application season, and things that are maybe making you not so happy this application season. And if you don't mind just raising your hand, and we will call on people. Kim, do you have some rants and raves you would like to start us off with?
Well, I do. I was trying to think of a rave so that I could start out positively, but I'm afraid there are more rants than other. For one thing, I am the mother of a senior this year, so I have lots of things to say. But my two biggest rants this year, working with my own students, would have been Alabama's asking us to recreate the activity list in their application and how frustrating that was for students, and then SRAR confusion, especially at Clemson, but at many places where I just felt like it was not clearly communicated to the students. So unfortunately that ends my rants, and I don't have a rave to add at the moment.
Oh, Claudia, please share.
Hey y'all, one of my rants is that Indiana is the one that comes to mind. Once a student submits through Common App to Indiana, after that moment is when they get additional supplemental questions. So they think they're complete with the application, and then all of a sudden they've got a series of additional questions they have to answer. Don't know if that's the case at other schools.
Any other answers? I've got a couple. I know that there are some other schools that have that sort of issue, that stuff surprises you. I think some schools have tried to get away from that a little bit. The SRAR sends me over the edge. Students having to recreate their transcript like 4 different ways. So if you have a student who's doing courses and grades, a student who's applying to Georgia, where they have to recreate their sort of core courses, a student who's applying to Florida schools that has SRAR, they have to recreate their transcript for schools in so many different ways. And actually, this is just a random thing, but I just got a presentation approved for the SACAC conference that Sumana Mudgal, who is, she's a school counselor at the Westminster School, she and I are going to do a presentation on the student experience of the Common App, and sort of helping from a DEI perspective, helping colleges to understand what it looks like for their students to apply to more than just their institution. And so I'll put my email in the chat in a little bit, but if people have thoughts about things that they would love to have covered at that session when we're doing that presentation, it's going to be very interactive, and we're hoping to actually make admissions officers go through various parts of the admissions process, and then sort of make it difficult in the middle. So we're going to tell one group, for example, that they can't use their phones, their internet is cut off. We're going to tell another group that they're not allowed to talk to each other. So that it's a presentation that we're doing. So if you have ideas, that would be great. Christine, please share rants and raves.
I just felt I needed to state that NACAC has, the National Association has a National Admissions Practices Committee. And I am one of only 2 IECs that is on that National Admissions Practices Committee. So there is an Admissions Practices Committee for these rants and raves, or rants about admissions practices that are occurring. And within the SACAC has, we have Admission Practices Committee, and SACAC does have an Admissions Practice Committee. And there, when you do have issues with admissions practices, with colleges, and there are practices that you feel that are not in the best interest of the student, please take those issues and bring them to your ACAC Admissions Practice Committee. And then they, in turn, every admissions practice committee has an affiliate. I happen to be the PCACAC, even though I'm SACAC, I happen to be the PCACAC admissions affiliate. And then they do kick them up to us at the national. Remember that in 2017, the powers that be in NACAC were stripped, as you might say, and that NACAC no longer enforces admissions practices. So it truly is ethics and being ethical and moral and doing what's right for the students. So it's about education. It is about having that conversation with colleges and with universities and saying, hey, what is best for students? So it truly is best practices. So NACAC does not have the authority to come in and say, hey, you can't do this. But what we do want is we do want everybody to be in on the same page and have that conversation. And that includes colleges, and that includes high schools, and that includes IECs, to all have this conversation on, hey, what's best for these kids? And, you know, is it really the best practice to have a, you know, October 1 deadline and everybody all in an uproar? And is this the best admissions practice? And those are the conversations we need to be having. Instead of ranting, and not that we shouldn't rant, but taking that information and bringing it somewhere and putting it on the table so that we can discuss it and say, hey, should we be doing that? So there are committees in place to actually take this information. And I did want to share that with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're so grateful for your participation on that, the committee for NACAC. And that was a huge reason that Sumana and I decided to do this presentation, hope to do this presentation. Now it's been accepted. It's because I think colleges admissions officers work so much in silos. And this is something I discovered when I worked with an admissions officer from Lehigh on a workshop for SACAC. They work so much in silos. It is very difficult for them to understand the comprehensive student experience. And so I think any of the ways that we can help colleges understand what students are doing, what they're living, what they're having to accomplish to apply to more than just their school, I think is really, really helpful. So Karima, yes, rants and raves.
I regret asking me to rant.
Yeah, we're going to go to 2 minutes, 2-minute rant.
Okay, I'll make it quick. It's the same rant I've had for 2 years, which is with the Uncommon app, which is I call it now because they just tick me off. And, you know, I assume colleges have to pay to get onto the Common app. That's how they make their money, right? I'm not missing that. And so Common app should be able to set rules and enforce them. So don't let a college join the Common app if they're not willing to use courses and grades instead of the SAR, or don't let them on if they're not going to be complete and truthful with their information. And so, you know, no college should be allowed to, when the kids look on a college's main page at the bottom, how often do we see, this college has no writing supplements? And I'm literally telling my kids every time, they're lying to you. The supplements are in there. They're in other sections. They're literally lying to you. That's not true. So on the Common App, they should include everything that's needed. If interviews are either recommended, like their interview policy, just like they have their testing policy, right? And on their testing policy, there's a link. They can go right to that school's website about the testing policy. Well, they should have that for interview policy. They should have that if they disclose whether or not they use the SAR, even though I don't think they should. They should disclose if they're going to have supplemental essays after submission. And now they definitely should have a link to their housing policy, because I'm constantly just telling my kids and families, okay, you got to watch out because you might have gotten in, but you don't know if you're going to get housing. So when does that deposit have to go in? Can you do it without enrolling, matriculating? Well, at some schools you can, but other ones you can't. And it's a maze. And so they should just, I think, Common App should hold the college's foot to the fire and say, if you want to join our Common App, keyword being common, then these are the things you need to do. But they let colleges do whatever they want. And that's why we now have the Uncommon App. Rant over. Thank you.
Well, there is at least one independent counselor on the college, on the Common App board. I'm not sure who that is right now, but I know I was on it several years ago. But you can talk to that person, and I'm pretty sure IECA has a rep for that.
It's Francine. I'm pretty sure it's Francine Block, who's a HECA member, I know for sure. And she and I have actually had this conversation quite a bit.
Oh, I know Francine. That's awesome, because her I can call. Yeah. So
one of the issues that she and I have discussed, though, is that, well, and this is probably more information than we need to go into right now, but when schools sign on to Common App, they're agreeing to use that main Common App, the profile, family activities, testing, education, that section, and that they don't have a lot of regulatory discretion over what colleges put into their own singular application. And so that is where that disconnect is happening. And so I think the people at Common App itself hear this quite a bit. But in terms of their agreements with schools, they don't have that just sort of discretionary ability to force those rules onto schools. So I think it really has to be a concerted effort from many different organizations. So the college admission practices, from hearing from IECs, from letter writing campaigns, from doing presentations at conferences, to help sort of spread that word of what it's become for students to have to apply. So, but yeah, that I would strongly recommend reaching out to Francine. Julia, rants and raves, and then in a couple minutes we'll switch over to learned and need to learn.
Just similarly, not knowing what the newest supplemental essays will be until August 1st, when we've got so many schools moving their dates up earlier and earlier, trying to work with students over the summers on their personal essays, but you can't even get started on the supplementals until after that August 1st. That's just a challenge.
Well, and I think too, the one that sent me over the edge this year was Auburn's September 15th deadline. You know, I work with students in Massachusetts. They've been in school for like 8 days at that point. And if you're our Wake County public school system, that the majority of students that I work with, their transcripts their official new updated transcripts didn't even come out until like October 1st, September 29th, October 1st. And so asking students to apply, and I actually think, you know, I think it's incumbent upon us to advocate for all counselors, so independent counselors and school counselors, to ask school counselors within the first 10 days of schools to be submitting things to colleges. What's happening in their offices is the absolute chaos of students trying to change classes. I just think it's sort of pretty much appalling. So, I mean, I think that concern's been widely heard, Deb. Yeah. Yeah. So you know it's been heard at high levels. Yeah, I'm sure it has. But I think that the more voices that join that chorus, I think the better, you know. So
well, I think as was pointed out, and it should be said, that in 2017, the Department of Justice
Of course.
stepped in and said, we can no longer regulate. And from that point on, colleges have been doing what they well please, and that irritates me.
And right now, the only thing we can do right now is educate and appeal to people's sense of ethics and people's sense of morals and people's willingness to educate, and that being their goal of what's best for the child. And that's
the colleges are not looking at it that way. And
right.
That's where we've
correct.
lost. The colleges are looking at it. These are boards of trustees that are looking at the balance sheet, the number of students that enter. I'm sorry, I'm really getting on rant. So
you're absolutely correct. You are absolutely correct. There is, other than appealing to people's sense of decency and truly being an educator, our hands have been tied.
Well, but even just giving the kids more of an opportunity to work on it over the summer when they have time. You know, it's like if the colleges want to move it up, that's one thing, but they're not backing up the dates where the kids can get started. So it's a discrepancy there. Like you can't have both. Like we're just not going to tell kids what they have to do until August 1st when they're just getting started with school and counselors are overwhelmed. And yet we're still going to require things in September, October 1st, October 15th, you know?
Well, and I'll just end with this and then we can switch over to sort of the learned and things you'd like to learn. Kim and I, the other day, were talking about University of Arkansas, and apparently now they have basically there's this sort of unspoken, which is again, a huge DEI issue, that if you need to start applying by July 15th, in their rolling admissions process, in order to be sort of considered, because their academic standards have shifted so much, which I'm just like, what is that even? And why can't these kids be teenagers? Like, I just want to burn things down and then start over. Would be great. Okay. Things that you have learned this year, anything that you have learned that you feel like other people would benefit from learning it, or anything that you would like to learn more about, or things that I think the other way to think about this is sort of a best practice, something that's really worked for you this year, or something that you would like to learn as well, like in terms of your practice. Any thoughts or ideas there? Kim, things you've learned, or Kim, things you would like to learn?
I've learned a lot this year, maybe more than I ever wanted to, about social media, but it's been fun and interesting, and just it's why it's a tool that the kids like. And well, I've always known that. My son never puts his phone down, but that idea of how you can engage through that. And then something I would like to learn, for me personally, I'm just always looking more at the business side and making my accounting and things much more smooth. So if anybody's got any great tools that they use for that, that would be awesome to hear about. You can drop it in the chat.
Any other folks, things that you have learned this year, or things that you would like to learn? Kim, actually, I'm going to go back to you for a second. When you're talking about social, are you using social media in a different way? Do you feel like you're doing something different with social media?
I'm engaging more in a Facebook group. So that's actually directed more at parents, but it has been building the idea of actually communicating that way, people asking questions, I'm answering questions. It's been more, I feel like that's been more productive than just trying to figure out what to post on a random weekday about various topics, which I'm still doing as well, but that developing that group and trying to get that really going has been valuable. And there are people in it who are clients and those who aren't, but that's fine. I want to give the information to whoever finds their way to the group. And so that's been really it's just been valuable, and we've learned from each other. The parents certainly have learned from each other and share experiences. And then in terms of just other platforms, no, I have not ventured into one social media friend of mine from graduate school has said, you really need to be on TikTok. I'm not going to TikTok right now. I don't want to be on the same platform with my teenager that often. But so no, I'm still just otherwise Instagram and Facebook. But she has taught me, this friend of mine, again, from graduate school, a lot about just the back end and how to look at how who's actually reading the information and looking at it. And again, just, it's been interesting as something else to learn about an aspect of my business, and trying to, as we all have to do, right, figure out where to spend our time and energy. And, you know, are these things really worth it? And I'll be able to really kind of analyze that much better in the next few months.
Julia, question or thing you learned, thing you'd like to learn?
I'm with Kim on the TikTok though. I don't really want to be on it. One of the things I started doing this year is a thing called challenge cards, and it's a different way to approach what kids want to study or what, you know, their career planning might look like. And it's kind of taking a bigger picture approach of what are some of the problems in this world you want to help solve, and then narrowing it down from there. But it's a set of cards that kind of like Coursava of what you're looking for in a college, but it's problems that you might want to solve. And I found that pretty awesome. The kids have loved it.
And Julia, is that something that you purchased, or is it something you created yourself? Like, is that something that
No, I purchased it. It's through SparkPath, I think it's called. Mm-hmm. And it's a series, I think it's like maybe 50 cards. And it's like, I want to re-engineer the healthcare system. I want to end world poverty. Like there's a whole bunch of them. They have a set for general, like more college based, and they have another set that's really trade school focused. They have an online version. They've got the physical card, kind of like Coursava. They've got the physical cards or the online version. But the kids have really lit up when they are like, oh, I can approach it from that angle. I don't have to just pick a job. And so it's been really beneficial to all of them.
And I'm sorry to ask you lots of questions about this, but are you doing that in individual sessions, like at the beginning of your practice with students? Like how are you incorporating it into sort of how you're working with your students?
I am doing it in individual sessions because I like the physical cards, because the online version is like a couple $100 per year, but you can get unlimited students. And I'm not to that point yet, although I'm hoping to be like able to do that. But right now I'm doing it individually. And I'm doing it fairly early on if they don't know what they want to do, because it's a little hard to pick colleges nowadays with undecided. A lot of kids feel like they need to have some direction, and so that increases their stress level of picking a school. So by doing this, it's like, okay, well, you don't have to know everything, you just have to have some kind of a direction. And so I tend to do it before we even go through the Coursava Loper type thing.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. That's great. I can see a lot of people are literally like looking it up on their screens right now. Other things that people learned or things that they would like to learn, a new best practice that you've incorporated into your practice, or something that you are hoping to figure out how to do better at all?
I don't know how to raise my hand. I'm sorry, but I and maybe the challenge cards would sort of take the place of this, but I have used science. I've used science, but I feel like I'm not very well equipped to sort of connect that platform with students in a way that's meaningful to them. So that's certainly something I would like to learn more about, or maybe I just need to come up with a different system for talking about careers. I don't use it with all of my students. I just use it with some who are really struggling with what they might want to major in. But I don't feel like I use that to its full potential, along with lots of my other tools. So anyway, that's something I'd like to learn more about.
Is there anyone who uses science a lot in their practice and sort of, Pamela, I am totally calling on you, my amazing dear friend and co-chair.
I just tell them, I'm not going to try to figure out what you're going to do for the next 40 years, but rather just it opens up the discussion, because if they don't have the vocabulary for that career, then it's not on the table. So partly I use it early just for them to save some things that they're interested in, and then try to find things out in the community or at their school that might be related for them to be exposed. So I think it takes the stress off when I'm telling them we're not picking anything, we're just exposing and just seeing what you're interested in.
I use the Highlands, which is the father or mother of youth science. And I'm a career counselor. So I work with the Highlands, and and it goes into much more detail than youth science does. Or I go into much more detail with the students, but I use that with the students. And again, it helps to open up possibilities rather than narrow them down.
I think the other thing with youth science is they have a lot of really good stuff to help kids kind of know themselves a little better. They have a whole like descriptions of youth section that can be helpful on their resume in finding phrases that would describe them. And I don't find the career piece as beneficial to them. It's just kind of a generic idea, but the getting to know themselves and how they interact with others is pretty helpful. I spend a lot more time on that on youth science than I do on the career side, but then it's helpful to kind of cross-reference. So when they get down to sorting these cards and the challenge cards, and they have 3 cards, then it's like, what do these things have in common? And then if you go over to the youth science side with the careers, then it's like, okay, how could some of those fit into these? So it just kind of adds on to it and allows them to combine to get ideas.
And I love, Pamela, I love the idea too of giving children the vocabulary. I think so often students are asked the question like, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? And they don't even have the words to describe it. They're like vaguely something with math. Like, I don't know. I like math. And so just starting to give them even those words, I think it's just so incredibly important. I'm not sure who you are because it says SACAC Zoom. You've got your hand raised, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, sorry, my name is Veena. I don't know why it says SACAC Zoom, but I'm hosting a call tomorrow. That's probably why.
Oh, that might be why.
Okay, well, I wanted to actually go back to the social media posting stuff. One of the things that I did during our downtime just before this cycle, I ended up creating 52 plus posts for college majors to introduce kids to all the different majors, and then batch process them and then uploaded them onto, you know, to be able to post 1 week at a time on my business and Instagram pages, business Facebook and Instagram pages. And then I did another batch about like advice on how kids should approach. And I sort of timed it so that everything hit at the right moment. So just before the FAFSA opened, there was a thing that said financial aid applications are coming. So there's, you know, so Canva is great for that, to be able to create all the posts. And then sort of, if you do it, then you can also like arrange it on a calendar through either Canva or I use an app called Later to be able to schedule everything. So you're not wasting time during the cycle doing stuff like that. If something suddenly pops up during the application cycle, I can jump into Canva, create a post, and then post that immediately. But otherwise, everything else is already done ahead of time. So I don't have to focus any energy on that.
That sounds amazing. And I would I would love to be that organized. I'm mostly doing the sort of like, hey, what's a thing that's happening today? We're going to talk about that. I love that idea. Bill, can you share with us the name of the product that you were talking about? I think some people are asking what that is. Oh, he's putting it in the poach, maybe.
I'm typing it into the chat. Oh, forgive me. I'm only typing with one finger. So, but yeah, that's coming in a moment.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Anything else that people, Karime, and things you've learned or things you'd like to learn?
I just want to add on to Veena's. I don't have a way of copying it and giving it to you guys, but if you wanted to share majors, different majors like that with your students, I've been posting about that since the beginning of the year. I started a campaign on my LinkedIn and my Facebook where I post about a different kind of major, like not the typical, just to get kids thinking. And I'm really kind of doing it as a general good for kids and families to realize that there are other things they can study besides the basic 6 that they can get jobs in. And all I really kind of do is describe it and give links. So feel free to copy it is my point. If you know how to copy it, whatever you want to do, go ahead. It's just out there for the sharing. So.
And will you put a link to that in the chat for us?
Yeah, I'll look for the link to my LinkedIn because it might be easiest for everyone.
That's perfect. That's great.
Yeah,
thank you.
I wish I knew how to share those things. I don't. So I'm just telling you to copy it. It's fine with me.
we love the freedom to share with, of course, a saying that you have graciously created this for people to share. I always love calling out colleagues.
And just FYI, I purposely did not post any majors at the highly selective schools. It's a little bit dual purpose. So they're seeing that there are these cool majors that exist at the non-top tier. I refuse to post anything about top tier schools. So.
Any other things you learned, things you'd like to learn?
Go ahead, Chris. Chris has her hand raised.
Oh, Chris, I'm so sorry.
Hi, everybody. Long time no see. I know I'm very quiet, which is usually not something that is true about me. I am actually a nerd about assessments, and I have used so many, I can't even begin to list them at this point. I have had good experiences and not great experiences with different assessments. I've done sessions on assessments, but because I work with a lot of creative students, performing artists, BSMD students, really different types of students. I'm very mindful about the particular assessment that I use with each student. Currently, I'm dabbling in Clifton Strengths. I don't know if anybody has taken that themselves. There is a great leadership development proponent in that I like quite a bit, and it offers students a great deal of insight when they're trying to think, well, how can I build my leadership skills? They don't really know what their skills are. So it sets them up to say, wow, I didn't even think about that. As far as the majors on and the careers in a lot of these assessments, they really don't apply to many of the students that I work with. So that's what I struggle with a little bit. And I'd love to have a psychometric PhD to work with so we can put together a new assessment for non-traditional students and students that are in different types of careers. I haven't seen, I feel that many of them are very general at best. So for most students, that probably is good. The other thing that I've run into with U Science, I find that it's difficult for high school students to really wrap their heads around the results unless you spend a lot of time with them. I have been more successful in giving that to college students for career development and for understanding themselves. So great seeing you all.
Always a delight to hear from you, Chris. And I sent you an email last week. Hopefully you saw it. So what I'd love to shift to now, and I know there is a way to save chats. I don't know what that is. Does anyone want? Can anyone? Yeah,
I'm
Kim.
pretty sure if you hover over the little paper icon at the bottom of the chat where you're saying, like if you were going to type a new message, there's a smiley face and then there's a piece of paper and you can click your computer, Google Drive, Dropbox, wherever you want the document to go.
Diggity. Thank you. So I'd love to just very quickly, February 7th and May 16th are our next two meetings. I just we've got about 5 minutes. So if anyone has, actually February 7th is going to be CTCL, the Colleges That Change Lives are going to do a quick presentation for us. And then May 16th is really going to be best practices and sort of a recap of the year, sort of what happened this year. So February 7th, May 16th, get those on your calendar. We'll also be having a session at the SACAC conference. But last thing, if hidden gems from this year, Chris, I think your hand is still raised. No, that's okay. Does anyone have any hidden gems, any schools that they've discovered this year that they think are particularly interesting, that they would love more students to know about? Yes, please, Susan.
Good morning, everyone. At our regional Broward Palm Beach IECA group recently visited FAU Wilkes Honors College, in Jupiter, Florida, and it was pretty amazing. It's a very small honors college within the public university state system in Florida. So you have, you know, that tuition and Bright Futures and Florida Prepaid. And the students can actually be a part of the regular FAU campus, which is, you know, very large with football team and all kinds of activities. They can actually be involved in Greek life on that campus. There are regular shuttles that are about 40 minutes between the two campuses. But the small classes, the internships, the research, and the interdisciplinary courses are just amazing. So everything we saw on that campus, we were very impressed with. So if students are looking at Florida campuses and want something a little different, it is a true hidden gem. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Julie, please.
So I work with graduate applicants, and I was invited to visit Nicosia Medical School in Cyprus and tour the whole medical school facility. Of course, they've always offered a traditional European model for med school where students come in right after high school. And it is actually modeled after, they've stopped the partnership because of Brexit with St. George's, which, you know, anyway, it was set up so that students who attend there can ultimately practice and, you know, study for the USMLE and practice in the United States. But because of Brexit, they had to quit that. But anyway, it's still set up so that their program will prepare students for the USMLE, and their pass rate on step 1 is 100%. Also, they have developed now a postgraduate program. That's what they call it in Europe, as opposed to graduate. So a traditional medical school program, I'm having a little bit of a difficult time with it because in the US, your med school is usually 4 years. And for a US student, they're recommending a 5-year program, but it is actually cheaper in 5 years to live in this beautiful island country. And they guarantee that you're going to get all your experience, your clinicals, you get great residencies, but it is a 5-year period instead of 4 years. And so a lot more to investigate, but it was an absolutely wonderful experience. Incredible people. It's a safe place, 0% homeless population, 80% English speaking, and almost everybody goes to college. Curiously, many go to graduate school as well.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Any other hidden gems this year? Any schools that people really thought that they thought were fantastic at all? I'm just gonna shoot one out there. Methodist University, which is in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I visited this past fall. If you have students who are interested at all in sports management or particularly PGA management, they have the oldest PGA management program, I think, in the United States. It is an extraordinary, it's beautiful campus. They give tons of merit aid, very small class sizes. I was just massively impressed, and it's, you know, an hour and a half for me. And I think it's one of those small liberal arts colleges that many people ignore in North Carolina because they're so focused on state and UNC. And but it was, Methodist University was really fantastic. So anyway, so thank you all so much. Again, February 7th, May 16th, 11 a.m. We will be meeting again. You'll be getting notifications from SACAC, and I hope to see you all then. Thank you so much for for joining us today. If you have questions or concerns at all, please don't hesitate to reach out to Kim or to me. Kim, final thoughts, closing ideas?
Thanks for everyone. Hang in there. Enjoy the break. Hopefully everybody is taking some well-deserved time off. And I was wrong about the chat. That is not how you download it. So I don't know. I have done it before, but I cannot remember how to save the chat. So that was not it.
That's okay. We can figure out maybe a way to collect the resources that people posted in here and send it out to everybody as a follow-up email. So again, thank you all so much for joining us today. If you have questions or concerns, I'm going to put my email in the chat right now. It's I type it really quickly because I type it so often. If you have questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out to Kim or me. We hope to see you in February and at the conference, and we hope everyone has a really wonderful holiday break, and an actual break. Like, take some time off. Don't talk to students for a little bit. Anyway, so good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us today.